The Hartwell family believed in success the way others believed in religion. It was sacred, and in their world, success looked a lot like power suits, prestigious law degrees, and Sunday brunches where people only talked in numbers and legacy. Alexandra Hartwell never quite fit that mold. She was the quiet one, the artist, the dreamer. While her brother Brandon was being prepped to take over the family law firm, Alexandra was painting murals in her college dorm and writing short stories that no one in the family ever read. Her father, Gerald Hartwell, made his opinion known early on. "We build empires here," he said one Thanksgiving, "not watercolors." Her mother, Evelyn, would always add with a tight smile, "Your brother's already managing client portfolios. Maybe you could help him with design work. Something creative but useful." At every family gathering, Alexandra sat at the far end of the table. People spoke over her. Decisions were made around her. Brandon was the golden boy, the heir, the name on the next door plaque at Mason and Hartwell LLP, and Alexandra. She was just Alexandra, a girl with potential, but no place in the empire. After graduating from a small liberal arts college, Alexandra didn't ask to join the firm. She didn't beg for a position. Instead, she quietly moved into a modest one-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn, took freelance gigs and started creating. She wrote branding copy, designed book covers. Then she started ghostwriting, then editing, then building her own tiny network of creative freelancers. What began as a trickle of projects turned into a steady stream. And eventually, a company. No one in her family noticed. They didn't ask why she skipped more and more dinners, or why she never showed up to the firm's galas. They certainly never asked about her work. So when Alexandra created her own brand Heart and Bloom, a boutique media collective, she didn't bother announcing it. She just built it, quietly, strategically. While her brother posted press releases about court victories, Alexandra negotiated licensing deals. While her father courted clients with country club memberships, Alexandra launched a digital campaign that went viral in 12 hours. But the real shift came when one of her clients, a struggling lifestyle blog, was acquired by a mid-sized content syndicate. Alexandra had helped grow their traffic tenfold. In return, she was offered equity. From there, everything accelerated. She started investing small at first, then bigger. A marketing firm here, a publishing app there. She created shell companies and trust accounts. She learned everything they never taught her at family dinners, all while being the failure artist daughter in her parents' eyes. Then, one crisp October afternoon, she got a call from Caroline Whitman, managing partner at Halston Equity. "We've been following your portfolio," Caroline said. "I think it's time we talk about something bigger." That something turned out to be the acquisition of controlling interest in a legacy firm, Mason and Hartwell LLP, her family's firm, her father's kingdom. And Caroline's voice had been calm, measured. "They're overleveraged, too traditional. But the brand still has value. With a smart transition, it could become something extraordinary." Alexandra didn't blink. "I'm interested." Over the next 6 months, she moved in silence. Her name was never on a document. She used proxies, blind trusts, and partner-led buyouts. Her fingerprints were nowhere, but her influence was everywhere. And the Hartwells, they didn't even realize they were bleeding power. Not until the quarterly investor meeting, one they thought would be a typical formality. Not until Alexandra walked through the glass doors. Not until she sat at the table. Not until it was already too late. The conference room at Mason and Hartwell was always intimidating: polished mahogany table, skyline view, and a wall of framed legal victories. It was built to make people feel small, but Alexandra Hartwell had never felt taller. She walked in wearing a midnight blue pantsuit, her curls pinned back in a sleek twist. Not a single Hartwell recognized her at first, not the junior partners fidgeting with their TIs, not the senior board members checking their watches, not even her own mother. Evelyn Hartwell narrowed her eyes. "You're not on the agenda. Who are you here with?" Alexandra smiled, calm as ever. "I believe item 3 on the agenda is the announcement of a majority stakeholder transition." Brandon, seated 2 chairs from the head of the table, laughed like she had made a mistake. "Oh, Lexi, this is a serious meeting. You can't just walk in off the street and Mr. Whitaker," one of the lawyers interrupted, holding a sleek folder. "The documents arrived this morning. Per the new ownership agreement, Miss Alexandra Hartwell now holds a controlling interest in the firm through Hartwell Strategic Holdings and 3 of its subsidiaries. The silence that followed was cinematic. Brandon's mouth opened and closed like a malfunctioning fish. Gerald Hartwell stood slowly, his face a thundercloud. "What the hell is this?" he barked. "Some kind of joke?" "I assure you, it's very real," Alexandra replied. She pulled out a chair at the head of the table, his chair, and sat. "You signed off on the acquisition yourself, through a capital restructuring deal 6 months ago. You just didn't read the fine print. You never do with the small deals." Evelyn blinked. "You bought us?" Alexandra's smile never wavered. "Technically, I bought the firm. The name, the clients, the assets. You came with it." Gasps rippled through the room. One of the older partners muttered, "Is that even legal?" Caroline Whitman, now seated at Alexandra's left, leaned forward. "Absolutely. Miss Hartwell has honored every clause, every regulation. This was a textbook acquisition." Brandon looked like he might vomit. "You don't know how to run a law firm." "I don't need to," Alexandra said smoothly. "You will continue operations. I'll oversee strategy. And I'll be approving every leadership decision, including the managing partner position." Gerald slammed a fist on the table. "You're not qualified. You're a child with a paintbrush. This is my legacy." "No," Alexandra said softly, but firmly. "It was your legacy. You were too busy worshipping your own image to notice the cracks forming beneath you." She slid a thick envelope across the table. "Here's a copy of the proposal I made 5 years ago, an idea for rebranding your outreach and expanding into digital litigation tools." "You never even opened it." Brandon's eyes darted down to the logo stamped in the corner. "Hart and Bloom? You wrote this?" he whispered. Alexandra turned to him, her voice like velvet over steel. "While you were busy chasing courtroom wins and buying Rolexes, I was building something sustainable, something scalable. You mocked my freelance work. You laughed when I didn't show up at family brunch. But while you were stuck in the old world, I created a new one." No one said a word. "I don't want to fire anyone," she added, standing. "But let's be clear, this is not a vanity takeover. This is a transformation. The firm has been stagnant for years. The only reason you're still afloat is the value of your name. I plan to honor that name, but I'll be rewriting the definition of what it stands for." Gerald's voice cracked. "What gives you the right?" Alexandra's eyes were piercing. "The same thing that gave you the right, Dad. Ownership." She paused, letting the words settle. Then she looked around the room. "This firm will evolve. You can either evolve with it, or step aside." Brandon slumped in his chair. Gerald's fists were clenched so tight, his knuckles were white. Evelyn sat frozen, as if trying to calculate how this daughter, this invisible, overlooked girl, had become the most powerful person in the room. Alexandra picked up her coffee cup, took a calm sip, and nodded toward the agenda. "Shall we move on to item 4? 3 hours after the takeover meeting, Alexandra stood alone in her new office, once her father's. The walls still bore his framed Harvard degree, his portraits with judges, and a massive photo of him shaking hands with a senator. All of it screamed power, control, legacy. She exhaled deeply and began pulling frames off the wall. A soft knock interrupted her. Without waiting for an answer, Evelyn Hartwell swept in, clutching her designer handbag like a lifeline. "How dare you humiliate us like that?" she hissed. Alexandra didn't turn around. "You didn't seem humiliated when you ignored my texts for 2 years. That's not the same," Evelyn snapped. "You blindsided us." "No," Alexandra said, finally turning to face her mother. "You chose to be blind." Evelyn's perfectly lined lips trembled. "I gave you everything. Tutors, ballet lessons, summer programs, and you just ran off to do art and consulting? You gave me everything," Alexandra said bitterly, "except belief. Every time I tried to contribute, I was treated like a decorative afterthought. Brandon got internships, introductions, mentorship. I got sent to deliver coffee." "That's not true." Alexandra opened a drawer and pulled out an old memo, one she'd submitted as a marketing proposal. Her father had scrawled across the top in red ink, "Cute. Let the girls handle the fluff." She handed it to Evelyn. "You all made it very clear. I wasn't one of you." Evelyn's shoulders sagged. "You should have told us," she whispered. "We could have worked something out." "I tried," Alexandra said quietly. "You just didn't listen." A beat of silence passed. "You always were a clever girl," Evelyn said finally. But being clever isn't the same as being respected. They won't follow you just because you bought them. I don't expect them to, Alexandra replied. Respect is earned. I've earned mine. And I'm not asking anyone to follow, I'm leading. Evelyn turned and walked out without another word. Alexandra leaned against her desk, heart pounding. She had dreamed of that confrontation for years. Now that it had happened, it didn't feel victorious. It felt necessary. An hour later, Brandon stormed in. No cameras, no theatrics, he barked. We need to talk. Alexandra nodded toward a chair. I'm not going to pretend I like this, he said, sitting stiffly. But I saw the numbers. You didn't just take the firm, you rescued it. We were bleeding cash. I know, she said. That's why I started buying in quietly. Through holding companies. I wanted the firm to survive, even if it meant you all never knew it was me. Brandon looked at her, confused. Why didn't you just say something? Come to us. We're family. Alexandra raised an eyebrow. Like when you publicly called my startup a Pinterest hobby. Or when Dad laughed at my client roster and said, she paints websites for yoga moms. Brandon had the decency to look ashamed. You all decided I was ornamental, she said softly. I stopped trying to prove otherwise. There was a long silence. Finally, Brandon asked, so what now? You gonna fire us? No, but I will restructure. We need innovation, new blood, better tech integration, and inclusive branding. I already hired a team of consultants. You're welcome to be part of it. If you're willing to take orders from me. Brandon let out a dry laugh. You're enjoying this. I'm earning this, she corrected. There's a difference. He stood, but paused at the door. You know, for what it's worth, I underestimated you. We all did. Alexandra nodded. I know. That night, she returned to her penthouse and stood on the balcony overlooking the city. This was the skyline that had once made her feel small. Now, it looked like a canvas. The first board meeting under Alexandra's leadership started promptly at a.m. She arrived early, wearing a tailored black blazer and a calm, steady gaze. Gone was the woman they once dismissed as the creative cousin. In her place stood a CEO who'd earned every inch of power. She sat at the head of the long mahogany table, her voice composed as she began. Let's begin with our rebrand. The room stiffened. Old partners exchanged uncertain glances. One finally spoke. You mean, rename Hartwell Legal? No, Alexandra replied. We're keeping the name, but we're redefining what it stands for. She clicked the remote. On the screen flashed a sleek new logo, followed by the words, Hartwell Legal, power with purpose. We're shedding the elitist image, she explained. No more $50 consultations for low-income clients. We're launching a pro bono division, expanding into tech law, and partnering with minority-owned startups. The old guard won't like it. That's fine. I'm not here to impress the old guard. A pause, then, to her surprise, a voice from the back said, it's bold, risky, but long overdue. It was Mr. Langston, one of her father's oldest allies. He met her eyes. We forgot what made this firm matter. Maybe it takes fresh eyes to remind us. Slow nods followed. Not everyone agreed, but they were listening. By the end of the meeting, Alexandra had secured initial buy-in. The vote to approve the rebranding strategy passed 6-3. It was a start. Over the next 6 months, the firm transformed. Gone were the cold, sterile offices and outdated filing systems. Alexandra brought in tech upgrades, flexible work policies, and weekly roundtables that encouraged innovation from junior associates, something unthinkable under her father's reign. Clients noticed. So did the press. Hartwell Legal reimagined. New CEO brings modern vision to historic firm. Read one headline. From rejected daughter to rising mogul, Alexandra Hartwell's bold leadership pays off. One afternoon, while reviewing expansion plans, her assistant buzzed in. There's a visitor here to see you. Says his name is Malcolm Granger. Alexandra froze. Malcolm had been her father's fiercest rival, a legal titan known for ruthless deals and his own Manhattan-based firm. He had also once offered her a job years ago right after she was pushed out of Hartwell. She had declined. Then, not out of loyalty, but because she wasn't ready. Now, he was in her office. She stood as he entered. He looked older, but his eyes were sharp as ever. Alexandra, he said, extending a hand. You've made quite the name for yourself, Mr. Granger. What brings you here? He chuckled. Let's drop the formalities. I came to make an offer. One we both know I wouldn't have made a year ago. She gestured for him to sit. He leaned in. Your firm is lean, efficient, forward-thinking. Mine has size and reach, but we've grown clunky. We complement each other. She tilted her head. Are you proposing a merger? A merger, yes. But with you as managing partner, you'd run the combined firm. Alexandra didn't respond immediately. Years ago, she might have been flattered. But now, her mind was already working through valuations, brand alignment, culture clash, risks. I'll consider it, she said finally. But I won't give up the heart of what I've built. Granger smiled. I wouldn't expect you to. After he left, Alexandra walked to her window. She wasn't just the boss now. She was becoming an institution. Later that evening, she visited the hospital. Her father was recovering from heart surgery, something Alexandra had quietly paid for. She didn't need him to know. She just didn't want guilt on her conscience. He looked frailer than she remembered, but his eyes still held that familiar fire. You're not here to gloat, are you? He asked dryly. No, she said, sitting. I'm here because, despite everything, you're still my father. A beat. You've built something impressive, he admitted. Even if you didn't do it my way, I built it because you didn't let me, she replied. You left me no other choice. He closed his eyes briefly. I never thought you had the stomach for this. I always did, she said. You just never looked close enough to see it. For the first time, he said nothing, and for Alexandra, that silence spoke louder than any apology. The merger with Granger and Beckman was finalized exactly 1 year after Alexandra took over Hartwell Legal. Industry insiders called it a masterstroke. The New York Times featured her under the headline, The Architect of Modern Law, How Alexandra Hartwell Redefined the Game. But for Alexandra, it wasn't just about headlines, it was about rewriting the legacy her family had tried to erase her from. The new firm was called Hartwell Granger LP not because she wanted her name first, but because he insisted. You earned it, Malcolm Granger had said. Let the world know who's really driving the ship. Within months, the firm expanded into 3 new states, opened a dedicated tech and ethics division, and launched a legal accelerator for underrepresented founders. Alexandra personally mentored every startup that came through their doors. She never forgot what it felt like to be underestimated. One afternoon, she received an invitation on thick ivory cardstock. You are cordially invited to the Hartwell Family Foundation Gala, celebrating 50 years of legal excellence. The irony made her smile. This time, she didn't hesitate. The gala was held at the Metropolitan Club, just like always. Crystal chandeliers, classical string quartet, endless champagne. She arrived in a navy silk gown, her hair pulled into a sleek chignon. On her arm was Rachel, her wife, and now chief legal counsel of their nonprofit division. They walked in. To a ripple of whispers and thinly veiled stares. At the far end of the ballroom stood Gregory Hartwell, her father, now retired. He raised a glass as she approached. I see you got the invitation, he said, voice low. I did. I didn't think you'd come. I almost didn't. He looked around. Everything they're celebrating tonight, you earned more of it than I ever did. That surprised her. Then why cut me out? She asked. He sighed. Because I was wrong, and I was afraid. You were better than me, and I couldn't face that. Alexandra blinked, stunned by the honesty. Her whole life, she'd chased that acknowledgement. I didn't need your permission, she said. I built everything without it. I know, he said quietly. And that's what makes you stronger than I ever was. A pause. I'm proud of you, Alexandra. The words landed soft and sharp at once. She gave a small nod, emotion swelling behind her ribs. Thank you. Then she turned, leaving him standing there as she returned to the center of the room. When the host tapped his glass and called the crowd to attention, he said, Tonight, we honor not only the legacy of Gregory Hartwell but the evolution of that legacy. Please welcome the woman who's carried it into the future, Alexandra Hartwell. Applause thundered through the hall. Alexandra stepped to the podium, took a breath, and looked out at the crowd. Her family, her firm, her rivals, her supporters, all of them had seen her as something she wasn't. Until now, I was once told that legacy was about inheritance, she began. But legacy is built, it's fought for, and sometimes, it's rebuilt from scratch. The crowd leaned in. I stand here not just as a Hartwell. I stand here as a lawyer, a leader, and a woman who was never meant to be in this room but made damn sure she got here anyway. The applause returned, louder this time. Afterward, as the music resumed and guests mingled, A young woman approached her fresh out of law school, judging by the nervous smile. "I just wanted to say, your story got me through a hard year," she said. "Thank you for not giving up." Alexandra smiled. "Don't thank me. Build your own legacy. And when they doubt you, let that be fuel." That night, as she and Rachel rode home in their car, Alexandra looked out at the skyline. Not just tall buildings, possibilities. She had reclaimed her name, reshaped her family's empire, and built something stronger than anything she'd inherited, a life and a legacy on her own terms.